Hi, everybody. Hi, Bobby. How you doing?
Whoops, I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't? Okay.
What happened?
Can you hear me? I could hear you.
You can hear me, but I can't hear you.
Yeah. Oh. I'm not muted. I just checked. So is anyone else on the call and can't hear me?
I can't.
Okay, let me
It's real faint.
tap to speak. Okay, your video is stopped.
Maybe I'll get off and get back
Wait.
on.
Okay, let me try. Your microphone is unmuted. It says that I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Oh, good. I hear you.
Yeah? You hear me?
I don't.
Okay, good.
Now I don't see you, but I hear you. Let
Oh,
me
wait,
see.
so wait, you're right. You can't now. You
Oh,
see
there
me
we
now?
go. Wait,
Okay. And I'm still, you could hear me?
I can
Okay,
hear you.
good. Okay,
Now I'm
wonderful.
going upstairs. Will you let the
Okay.
dog in?
Wonderful. I am just going to bring the camera close to me. How's everybody doing?
Great. Thank you. We have such gorgeous weather. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, me too. I'm loving it. It's starting to cool down. So
Yeah,
it's
Scott
really
said it's very cool.
so nice. We're loving it so much.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Okay.
He too.
I see Rosalie is here. I thought I saw someone else, but I don't see them now. So I'm going to start. It's recording. Unfortunately, I'm not on social media today because Torch gets a lot of hits on social media, but my device is not working. Like my computer just.
Glad I tuned in. I was waiting. I was going to listen to it on Facebook. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So there's two things going on. Rabbits and Busco, they just moved. They don't have internet in the house. So there's like a system that Torch has called StreamYard, and it puts it on YouTube but she can't hook me up. She has to do it from her side. And then I could do live Facebook, but my computer decided to die on me right before the class. So I'm doing this all from my phone. So I love this Parsha. I love this Chumash, I really do. Because the patriarchs and the matriarchs, really, they're so juicy, you know? It's like literally a Jewish telenovela. A lot going on, and it's a Jewish soap opera, you know? And it moves fast. It's like, wow. From creation, we're already.
Is that what we're talking about, Vayera?
Yeah, Vayera, right? So Vayera literally means, and God revealed himself to Avraham. So I'm gonna do a quick overview of the Parsha.
Okay, and Devorah, Myra's gonna come on, so look for her so you can add her. Okay.
Oh, okay, great. And I see Annette walking. It looks like Annette's in Israel for some reason. Like the background, I see like, you know how like Israel has the stone houses, but I guess
I'm gonna look for her.
I'm sitting on my swing. It's
beautiful. I love
it.
How are you, Annette? How's everything?
Baruch Hashem. I'm sorry I've missed the last couple classes. Just
no worries. You know, we're happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. Here.
Did you see my husband when he was there?
I did not. Normally I do, but this time I didn't.
He was there like real quick. He came in on a Thursday, left on a Monday, and now he's in Las Vegas. And poor guy, all over the world. I mean, all over America, just traveling. But thank God, it allows us to live in Israel. And it does feel like a small community. The world is not that big, right? We could do this. Is wonderful. So last week we spoke about like how fast like Bereshit as creation leads into like the story of like the end of Bereshit of Noah, and then the generation of Bavel and the flood, the disbursement of humanity. And then we hear about the birth of Avraham. You're like, we could breathe, right? Because Avraham brings like a calm into the world. We said the Hasidic masters really kind of like correlate the three parashot, Bereshit, Noach, Lech Lecha, to the three sefirot of Chesed, Devorah, Tiferet. Chesed, we say in benevolence, kindness. The first millennia was unconditional. Hashem just like wanted to bestow pleasure on us, created a world. And then Noach, it's Hashem, it's Gevura, it's restraint, is rigor, is Hashem is allowing humanity to kind of make, they have free will now. They're going to have to exercise it. They fail epically at it, right? With the flood and with the Tower of Babel. But it's what the teacher needs to do. He needs to hide himself a little bit, right? And he needs to allow them to do the work. And with the birth of Avraham, we're entering the third millennia, which is Tiferet. Tiferet is compassion. Tiferet is really the combination and the intertwine of Chesed and Gevura. It's kindness, generosity. The first millennia, God created a world for us, Garden of Eden. Second millennia, we said, was restraint and Gevura, rigor. And Tiferet is literally taking Chesed and Gevura and creating harmony, creating a synthesis, creating, balance. And that's what the patriarchs and the matriarchs were all about. When they came to the world. So before that, like we said, Chesed is like a baby. I'm taking care of the baby. I have no expectation that the baby has to do chores, right? Or respect me in any way. They're going to wake me up at 3 a.m, even though I just gave birth 2 minutes ago, right? But in the second phase, like the parents take a step back, we expect the kids to learn, to reciprocate back and to be mensches, right? And the third millennia is what's so amazing is the integration of both. And with the matriarchs and the patriarchs were the first to discover the idea of a one God. Remember, until then, there was just no concept of it, right? So that was so amazing about them. And it was about developing a relationship with God in the physical world, ushering God into this world in a very physical way. Because what happened was, until then, they were like the few spiritual people that like were up here, and then you had the wicked people, the people of the flood, the people, of the Tower of Babel, and there was no synthesis and harmony in the world. When the matriarchs and the patriarchs come, they are developing a relationship with God, and they're all about creating this harmony. It's just beautiful to see. What was so special about our matriarchs and our patriarchs? The bottom line is they gave Hashem so much nachat. That's why Hashem was madly in love with the matriarchs and the patriarchs, because they gave him nachas. You know what nachas is? We're all parents. You know what I'm talking about. They gave him joy. He quelled over them. Why? Because they understood that there was a creator to the world, and they seeked a relationship with God, right? In an era and a time where it wasn't the in thing. Like Avraham got thrown into a furnace. So if I was Avraham, I would say, honey, I don't know about the one God idea. I think you and I should go live in a cave and we could practice this one God thing and like hand it down to our kids and homeschool them. But we're not going to really spread this message. No, Avraham and Sarah, they're like, why should we keep this only to ourselves? Like humanity should know about this, right? What happened when there wasn't the concept of a one God? Humanity got destroyed. They self-destructed themselves. it couldn't go on. It really couldn't go on. If Avraham did not come into being, so there would have been all these societies like the flood, generation of the flood, and Tower of Babel, and it would have just self-destruct itself. A little bit like what you're seeing right now happening in the world to us right now, right? But thank God for Torah, and thank God for those who hold on. And the real challenge of our generation is emunah, nothing else but emunah, you know? Hey, I see Yocheved. Yocheved Schwartzman. Yocheved, are you still in Houston?
Yes, I'm in Houston, leaving Fondren. I'm in
wonderful.
Fondren.
So listen, when you come back, call me. We have to get together in the
I'm
Holy Land.
coming back. I'm coming back before Erev Yom Ha'atzmaut. It's around the end of April after Pesach.
So you're coming back to Israel until Yom Ha'atzmaut?
Before, and
Before.
after Pesach. After Pesach.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so what was so special about the patriarchs and the matriarchs is that they truly loved Hashem. They truly seeked Hashem, you know? And it's so incredible. How were Sarah and Avraham able to recruit so many people to their camp, so to say? I'm going to call it their camp, the woke society of Avraham and Sarah, right? The one God society. How did they do that? They had a lot of followers. It says the Midrash tells us that they went viral. Doesn't say it in those exact words, but you know what I'm saying. Why? How did they do it? So the Mamash says that Avraham represents chesed, that through his kindness and his love that him and his wife had for humanity, you know, they were able to bring so many people into their camp. You know, it wasn't that they stood there and proselytized. It was that they were so in love with Hashem, and they were living such an inspired life that because of their inspiration, it was contagious. And they weren't selfish about this. They were sharing it with others. And people saw them and saw the happy faces they had and the amazing achievements and successes they had. And the love that they had, and the achnasat orchim, the welcoming the guests that they had, the open tent from four sides. And they felt welcomed, loved, and unjudged. And because of that, Avraham and Sarah were able to convey this message of, you know, monotheism in the world and hand it down to the next generations. And it came from a place of love. They didn't look at their generation and say, ew, this is a horrible, horrible people. No. They loved everyone just the way they were. And you actually see it when Avraham in this Parsha, he goes through circumcision and he sees guests, and they're not even Jewish. It's these these angels were dressed up in disguise like Arabs, 3 Arab peasants. And even though he wasn't feeling good, he ran to them and he's like, please, please. He so badly wanted to do the mitzvah and welcomed them and fed them like kings, and just incredible, you know? And like you're seeing this like unconditional love that they had. So they had this unbelievable love for Hashem. And in turn, that turned them into such loving people that they had unconditional love for humanity at large. And through that, they were able to bring Hashem's message into the world. If you want your message to catch on, to be contagious, is you be passionate about it, you be inspired, you know, and through that, you're going to inspire others. It's really not about preaching, it's about living. When you live an inspired life, that people pick up on that, you know, your close circles and your outer circles, and the impact and the ripple effect that you have on the people around you is just incredible. So now we are the next 50 parashot, the Chumashim are 54 parashot, right? Portions in the Torah. So the first 3 we're saying Bashit Noach Lecha correspond to those 3 sfirot. And we're now basically the next 50 parashot are the story in the journey of the matriarchs and the patriarchs, them going their life, their relationships, their tools of how to form a relationship with God. If you want to know how to form a relationship with God, you feel disconnected, go to this Chumash Bereshit. How did Sarah do it? How did Avraham do it? And it's not like they had easy lives. They had adversities, tragedies, buttons pushed, lacking. Women, all the matriarchs were barren. They could not have children because Hashem wanted to hear their prayers. He wanted to form this relationship with them. So they cried out to him and they realized what they were lacking and who could provide it. And then it goes into them going down to Egypt and culminates with the climax, the highlight of Mount Sinai, of humanity getting revealed, the biggest gift that humanity ever got, which is the Torah. The Jewish people are getting the Torah. And by the way, when we got the Torah, it's not just our personal gift. We are Or LaGoyim, a light unto the nation. That means that we have an obligation to disseminate and transmit Torah to those that are around us, okay? What I mean Torah, it does not like go around TJ Maxx today and start teaching people the Parsha. It's living a moral life and you become the moral compass of the world, right? So people look up to you and say, wow, want to be like you. And then it's their journey through the desert into the promised land. We said the Hasidic masters always look at promised land as our actualized potential. We said last week that Avraham and Sarah, they went down to Egypt to set a precedent. Later on, when we went down to Egypt, we had spiritual muscles because Sarah and Avraham went through it too. And they got kidnapped into Paro's, Sarah got kidnapped. And then he obviously sends her away because he can't touch her. They were plagued in the palace and he sends her with great wealth. Jewish people later on get sent away with great wealth, right? And we said that this great wealth is not just money and materialistic stuff. Great wealth means elevating the sparks. It's the sparks. It's everything they were able to gather in Mitzrayim, right? The tikkun that they accomplished there. And I'm repeating this because it was so beautiful. We said that the Hasidic masters look at Avraham and Sarah as on a different level, on another dimension. They're saying that Avraham and Sarah represent the soul, the journey of the soul. Avraham being soul, Sarah being body. Avraham and Sarah together are paired, and we know that they were an amazing team, right? They were both teachers, advocates, they did outreach, they were very charismatic, right? And they were a very great team. And Avraham actually tells Sarah, look, we need to descend down to Mitzrayim. You need to tell them that you're my sister, because if not, they're going to kill me. And if you say you're my sister, through you, I will live and I will not die. On a deeper level, Kabbalistic level, the soul is talking to the body and say, listen, we're going down to this physical world. It's like a Mitzrayim, it's narrow. Meaning what? That there are buttons that are going to get pushed in Mitzrayim, in this physical world. Temptations, trauma, tragedy, lack, doubt, fear, anxiety, all these things in the physical world. Up there in the world of souls, it's wonderful. It's like being on vacation 24/7. You're basking in the light of God. It's very easy, to be spiritual up in heaven. But the neshama, in order for them to live in great wealth, to gather the sparks, to do the tikkun, to actualize their potential, they need to go down to Mitzrayim. They actually need to descend down. The Jewish people, on the simplistic level of the story, needed to go down to Mitzrayim in order to refine themselves, to be worthy to receive the Torah, and to be able to have the stamina to handle Eretz Yisrael. Because when they're in Eretz Yisrael, it wasn't easy. There were wars, they had to conquer the land, and it was a different kind of story. It wasn't like being in clouds of glory, manna falling down from heaven, things are getting spoon-fed. They're not getting spoon-fed anymore. Where did they get the stamina to go through all that? By the fact that Maaseh Avot Siman Lebanim, whatever it is that our parents went through, our matriarchs, patriarchs, they imparted to us that muscle, that spiritual muscle. And that's exactly what happens. The body and the soul go down, right? But they leave in great wealth. If the body is in service of the soul, they will end up living in great wealth, meaning they will have all the rewards through all the mitzvot that they do. They will gather all the holy sparks, that's the great wealth, and they're going to get into the promised land and actualize their potential. There's a beautiful story of Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach that he talks about the in Krakow, when they were marching the Jewish people to the death camps. The Rebbe of the community, he started to hum this like nigun, this melody, and it started kind of solemn, and then it went into like some kind of like a bouncy dancing. He started to dance, and his community looked at him and said, Rebbe, how can you sing a melody like this as they are marching us to death? And he said, a Jew, wherever he goes, he's on the way to Yerushalayim. How could I not rejoice? We are all going to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim represents the epitome of potential, the epitome of connection, the epitome of relationship between us and God. A Jew, wherever he goes, he's on the way to Yerushalayim. You could be in Houston, you could be wherever you are in the world. You are always walking towards Jerusalem, towards Jerusalem. What does that mean? It's not a direction, it's a mindset. Jerusalem is a mindset, okay? Jerusalem means that ultimate place. Yerushalayim milashon shalem. It's the root letters of shalem. Shalem in Hebrew means whole. Jerusalem means whole, meaning our whole, feeling wholesome. When we're connected with God, we feel wholesome, we feel calm, right? When we throw our worries to God, there's no anxiety anymore, right? When things seem so big, so great, so scary, we just say, Hashem, listen, it's too big for me. I'm handing it over to you. I can't handle this. This is too big for me. I don't know how I'm going to overcome this. And you throw it to Hashem. And then you feel one with God. You feel whole. Jerusalem comes from the root letters of whole, shalem, Yerushalayim, shalem, because it represents that wholesomeness, that potential, that oneness. So interesting, just side note, and I think I mentioned this a few times. When I was in Krakow in 2006, I led a group of kids on the March of the Living, and I taught them this melody in Krakow. It's a beautiful melody. Now I forgot it. It like escaped me. La 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 la. And I was in a group of, it was 10,000 Jewish students, but we were like in our group, 50 kids, and we're standing in front of a mass grave that they made the Jewish people of Krakow, the ghetto, dig, and they were shot and basically shoved into that place. And we're standing above this horrible, like tragic mass grave, and we're singing this melody. And we thought about what the Rebbe said, that a Jew, wherever he's going, is out on the way to Jerusalem. And we were filled with like joy, like we really did start dancing, because we knew they didn't die in vain, and that they're going to return, and that, that legacy continued. We didn't disappear. Am Yisrael Chai, like we're still here, we're such a miracle, and it's not that just that we're physically here, that we're mentally and spiritually here. That is a triumph. That is what's so incredible about, Am Yisrael Chai, that our spirit is alive. I mean, you could be alive but be a dead person, right? We know a lot of zombies, right? These kind of people, they're alive but dead inside. I'm talking about really, really Am Yisrael Chai, being alive. Avraham and Sarah, that's exactly who they were. They were alive. They were alive. They were so inspiring. It was like you cannot not believe in God when you were in the presence of Avraham and Sarah. Now we're made out of their DNA. So we have this charisma of, I will call it the God charisma. We have the God charisma. It's like we don't even have to go far to tap into it. We have it, right? So quick overview of the Parsha. Then I'm going to dive into a little bit more into Sarah specifically to see what her qualities were. And then I want you guys to think of this question that I'm going to want you all to answer it if possible, is we spoke about how Avraham and Sarah loved God. What helps you to love God? I would love to hear you share it with the group because it's so interesting. What turns you on? Like, how do you fall in love with God when you feel disconnected from God? Because we're always going to have moments of, we call it in Chassidut, Ratzol v'shov, where we're going down and up, down and up. It's like a flame of a candle, and it goes up and down, right? And then there's that part that pulls us down to the earth and wants to just do what we want to do. Ego, we call it ego. And then there's that exalted part of us that loves Hashem and we want to just be godly, right? And we feel connected. Okay. And so think about that question. What helps you love Hashem, feel that love for Hashem? And how can we give Hashem nachat? Because we said that our matriarchs and our patriarchs, what they did, why they were so dear to Hashem, is they were so precious to God because they gave him a lot of nachat. How can I give God nachat? It's a question that we always have to ask ourselves. And like mamash, it should be like the question in our mind in the morning, right after Modani, how can I give God nachat today? Like literally type it up. How can I give God nachat today? And when you operate from that perspective, how can I give God joy? How can I make him proud of me? You know, it is like you just operate differently. Because if you feel like yelling at someone, if you feel like not behaving in a godly way, you're like, will God be proud of this? Like, I don't want to disappoint God. I want God to have nachat. I want God to look at his children and say, wow, I'm impressed, you know, that they're in a situation that's confining, like the physical world, Mitzrayim, and yet they are rising above it. Okay, so God reveals himself. This is Vayera in a nutshell. God reveals himself to Avraham 3 days after circumcision. We know that the third day of a sick person is the hardest day. And he was at the age of 99. Avraham rushes off to prepare a meal for the 3 guests who appear in the desert heat. One of the 3 who are angels disguised as men announces that exactly 1 year from today, Sarah, who is barren, will give birth to a son. What does Sarah do? Sarah laughs. We're going to talk about Sarah's laughter. Where did that come from? What does it mean? And how did she rectify that laughter? Avraham pleads with Hashem to spare the wicked city of Sodom. He has a nephew there, but he also cares about humanity. Remember that Avraham, he didn't consider himself, like he always put others in front of him. And when he discovered Hashem in the world, right? You remember he was born into idol worship, his father had a factory for idols, right?
Amen.
Amen.
So he comes from like, you know, it's like Toys R Us. Father was the head of Toys R Us. Idols R Us, right? And yet the son of the CEO of Idols R Us suddenly becomes from. It's kind of wild, you know? He starts talking about a one God, you know? So it's like so not cool. His father tries to like hide him in the house, but he comes out of the closet, basically. I believe in a one God, you know? And he smashes his dad's idols. And we know all the amazing stories in Midrashim about Avraham, right? And he gets him thrown into the furnace. And yet he dangers his life. It's dangerous to believe in a one God in a pagan society. Like they could actually, you know, sacrifice him, right? That's what they used to do. They actually used to sacrifice their own children in pagan society. But yet he says, no, it's not a secret that I could keep to myself. I have to spread this message of a one God, of a benevolent God, of a loving God, not just a God, a loving God, you know? Today, and I'm going to take a little break, ADD break here. My friend told me about a very powerful exercise. I really want to do this. She said that her, this therapist, Miriam Adahan, she's a psychologist that lives in Jerusalem and wrote many, many books. Google her. She's incredible. Miriam Adahan. And she was having like a lot of I guess, self-esteem issues. And Miriam Adahan said, okay, I want you to write a letter as if God is writing you the letter. And what would he be saying to you? And she said, that's weird. How can I write for God? She felt like it was heresy. Like, I can't do that. So the therapist literally took her hand and she put her hand over her hand and she started writing with her. I'm going to make up a name. Dear Amy, I love you unconditionally. You give me so much joy, you know, and this and this and that, you know, and I see you and how precious you are to me, and I love you unconditionally. You've got a great mission in this world. I believe in you. And she was just so blown away because she never felt or believed that God truly loved her. She didn't like ever think of God as a loving God. So she didn't want to have a relationship with God because why would you want to have a relationship with something that hates her? In her mind, God hated her. God didn't love her. So important. The message that Avraham and Sarah kept giving to the world is the message of a loving God. They loved everybody around them, no matter what religion, what they were. And they conveyed the message of Hashem. Hashem loves everybody. There's no hierarchy in Hashem's eyes. He doesn't care you're black, you're white, you're Sephardi, you're Ashkenazi, you're Jewish, you're not Jewish. He loves us. We're his children, right? We're made in the Tselem Elokim. We all have within us the godliness, that spark of godliness within us. How could he not love us, right? So Avraham, he's devastated that God's going to destroy Sodom. And the two of the three disguised angels arrived in the doomed city where Abraham's nephew was, Lot, and he extended hospitality to them and protects them from the evil intentions of the city, of the mob. And the two guests reveal that they have come to overturn the place. They explain this to Lot, to Abraham's nephew, and they're here to save him and his family. Lot's wife, you remember now they get whisked away from Sodom, and Sodom now is getting basically turned into salt and fire, and Hashem is destroying Sodom because they're so wicked there. And they say that Sodom is around the area of the Dead Sea. What happens? Lot wives they say don't turn around. Like it's not, there's like a thing called binfol oivecha al tismach. When your enemy falls, don't rejoice. So the angels told them, do not turn back. Don't look back as you're leaving Sodom to see what's happening. It's inappropriate. You guys are getting saved. Just walk away from it. But don't start looking back and say, woo, we made it. You know, look at all those people drowning, you know. So she turns around and she turned into the pillar of salt. If any of you have been to Israel, a lot of tour guides make up a lot of great stories about, like, if you're driving down to the Dead Sea, oh, that's the pillar, that's Lot's wife, and that's Lot's wife, you know. So really, we don't really know where's Lot's wife, but it's cute. I love how they attempt to guess. When she disobeys and she does not look back, she turns into the pillar of salt. We were saying, while taking shelter in the cave, Lot's daughters, believing that it was the end of society, like humanity as they knew it, they decide to live with their father, and to through this illicit relationship, there would be a continuity to humanity. One of them, she's very brazen, and she calls her kid Moab, from father, and the other one calls him Ammon, nation, because this will continue humanity. Later on, right, we know all about, Ammon and Moab. Moab root comes from Moab, right? That's incredible. She comes from this very dark, kind of like source. Mashiach comes from there. Avraham moves to Gerar, where the Philistine king Avimelech takes Sarah. Sarah gets kidnapped again. Remember, she gets kidnapped by Paro, and she's getting kidnapped by Avimelech, who is presented as Avraham's sister, and she takes her to his palace. In a dream, God warns Avimelech that he will die if he touches her, and he returns the woman to her husband. Avraham explains that he feared he would be killed over the beautiful Sarah. Now God remembers his promise to Sarah, and he gives her and Avraham a son. So we heard in the beginning of the Parsha the promise that they will be blessed with a son, and now it actually happens. By the way, when Yitzhak was born, he looked exactly like Avraham, identical. Why? Hashem did that so people wouldn't say, oh, Avimelech, the king that kidnapped her, impregnated her. Yitzhak is named. The name Yitzhak means laughter. I want you to remember this because we're going to go soon and talk about Sarah's laughter. And if it was negative laughter, why commemorate this and call her son laughter? Because she got rebuked for laughing. Isaac is circumcised at the age of 8 days, which is what all Jewish boys do now, right? Avraham is 100 years old. Sarah is 90 at their child's birth. They're very, very young, you know. Okay, so I still have hope. I just turned 49 last week, so I could still have kids, I guess, another 60 years. Hagar and Ishmael are banished from Abraham's home and wander in the desert. And by the way, the roots of the conflict of Israel and Palestinians starts here. God hears the cry of the dying lad and saves his life by showing his mother a well. Avimelech makes a treaty with Avraham in Beersheba, where Avraham gives him seven sheep as a sign of their truce. God tests Avraham's devotion and he's commanding him to sacrifice his one and only son from Sarah, Isaac, on Mount Moriah, which is Temple Mount, in Jerusalem. That's why, by the way, Har Habayit, Temple Mount, is very, very holy place to us, because that's where we believe that the entrance to Gan Eden is right there. The altar was there, the Mizbeach in the Holy Temple, and the binding of Isaac took place there. So we're talking about a vortex. We're talking about like the most like atomic bomb type of kedusha, of holiness that's there. Isaac is bound and placed on the altar, and Avraham raises the knife to slaughter his son, and a voice from heaven calls him and says, don't do it. Here's a ram, and sacrifice that. A ram is caught and the undergrowth by his horns and is offered in Yitzchak's place. Avraham receives the news of the birth of the daughter of his nephew Bethuel, and her name is Rivka. Now, the Parsha leaves us right here. We're hearing about the birth of Rivka. We're hearing about the binding of Isaac. She's going to be the wife of Yitzhak. She is going to continue the legacy of Sarah. And now we're going to talk about Sarah. I lost everybody's faces, but I'm okay. I'm like talking right now to a screen. Okay, so what is
We're
so
here.
unique about, you're here? Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that everybody could hear me. Okay, what is so unique about Sarah? We're saying that Avraham and Sarah, they were the first ones to usher God into the world in a very physical way. Like it used to be that people didn't really know about God, about the creator of the universe. And then when they did learn about God, they didn't realize that God actually seeks a very personal relationship with us. That's what it's about. We're here for, God willing, 120 years and more, because they're going to discover that by the time I'm that age, hopefully. I want to live to forever. That our relationship with God, that's what it's all about. It's about perfecting and refining the godliness within us and becoming one with God, becoming more and more godly, behaving more and more godly. So Sarah, what was so unique about Sarah? Sarah was able to sanctify God in her space, in time, and in her body, with her body. And therefore she was blessed with 3 amazing miracles, amazing blessings. She, so to say, stretched the boundaries of physicality because she didn't see a difference between the holy and the mundane. For her, everything was holy, and everything was an opportunity, even if it was very physical, to elevate and make it holy. So she was always welcoming guests, and she was using her voice to teach, and she was keeping the marriage laws with her body. And they say Avraham and Sarah kept all the mitzvot, and they sanctified Shabbat as a holy day, and they're keeping Shabbat. So she was creating godliness in every aspect of her life. And this like almost like supernatural, like everything to her was like a miracle. So these three miracles appeared in her tent, and later on she imparted that to the other matriarchs, imparted that later on in history to the Jewish people in the desert, and to us, as we will see. So the first miracle, that her Shabbat candles lit all week, from one week to another. Why? Because Sarah never saw a difference between the holy and the mundane. So for her, it was like one long Shabbat. It was holy, 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 with no break. The second thing that she was blessed with was her bread stayed fresh the whole week. And what is that? Why? Because again, she understood that her sustenance comes from God, and she understood it as all being like a miracle. She didn't like say, oh, I have food on my table because I went to Harvard and I got a degree and I have a job and I could make money and therefore I can support my family. She saw the real source, which is the truth. Everything comes from God. And there's this great appreciation. And with that, she always gave to others. Their tent had 4 openings, just constantly like a revolving door. People were always welcomed in their house. She shared whatever she had because she said, it's not mine. It all comes from God, and it's to share. It's the gift of sharing. So she was blessed with her bread stayed fresh the whole week. Bread representing parnasah, livelihood, recognizing that our livelihood comes from God. Then the third miracle that she was blessed with was that there was a cloud of the Shekhinah, of the divine presence that hovered over her tent. It was tangible. God was very almost like physical in her house. Can you imagine that in your life, like there's a cloud of glory and it follows you wherever you go? And you have a question, you kind of like say, hey, almost like a genie, what should I do? And it's like right there, you get the answer. You have clarity. You like intuitive, you're connected. She was a prophet because this cloud of glory like hovered over her. That's the Shekhinah, like was right there. And let's look at how she imparted this later on in history and how it's in our homes today. Later on in history, the first miracle, that the candle burns all week. In the Holy Temple, the candelabra had a candle that stayed lit the whole week. It was called the Ner HaTamid. The Ner HaTamid burnt always, like it just stayed continuously burning to commemorate that beautiful candles, Shabbat candles in Sarah's home that constantly were lit. And again, it's not just a physical thing. It means that there was a fire. She was always on fire. You know that song, "This girl is on fire," right? That's what that girl was on fire. It was like just alive, completely alive, completely full of light. Later on, she imparted that to us. We have the Shabbat candles. Again, the opportunity to bring holiness into our homes. And it's not just limited to the Shabbat. Shabbat candles, they're there to light the whole week. If we do Shabbat right, meaning that we really internalize it and really feel the connection with God, then throughout the whole week, we feel the connection. It's kind of sad that someone says, I feel real spiritual on Shabbat, but during the week, I get so caught up, I'm so distracted, the week is so crazy. You need to bring more Shabbat into your weekday. If you're feeling so depleted, bring some Shabbat light into your week. It's easy. All you have to do is connect to it. It's a mindset, okay? Then the second thing that we said, her bread stayed fresh all week, is sustenance, livelihood. So much, by the way, divorces happen, like when they do like data analysis a lot of it revolves around money. Of course, miscommunication and lack of intimacy and all that, but a very big thing that breaks relationships is when there isn't enough sustenance, when there's stress around it, right? Sustenance is such an important thing, right? Because when we have sustenance, livelihood, we have serenity to worship God, to be in service of God, and to serve humanity and to give on to others. So in the desert, the Jewish people were blessed with the manna that stayed fresh no matter what in the holy temple, and that was to commemorate, so to say. It was a correlation and direct, so to say, gift that she imparted to us on her zechut, in her merit. And in the holy temple, we also had the showbread, lechem apanim, that stayed fresh all week, from one week to another. Again, that was the gift of Sarah into history, that she imparted into history. And today, into our homes, we have the ability, when we do the mitzvah of hafrashat challah, of baking chalot and separating the challah, we're actually, again, bringing the energy of that gift and the miracle that Sarah had in her tent into our home. Because when we take dough, separate dough, we're actually recognizing that our sustenance comes from God. And this is to be put aside, meaning it's not mine. It all comes from you, God. It's not that I own it. The third thing that she was blessed with was the cloud of glory. The cloud of glory represented Shekhinah, divine presence. Literally, she had like a walk-in. You have a walk-in closet, walk-in Shekhinah. Like she had like a chamber of Shekhinah in her house. And it wasn't just in her house; it was in her brain, in her heart, and every fiber of her being. She was so godly. She was so connected to the godliness within her. She was one with God wherever she went. She carried, so to say, the Shekhinah with her. The cloud went with her wherever she went. Later on in the desert, the Jewish people, when did we hear about the clouds again? I just want to make sure you're all with me. The clouds of glory that surround the Jewish people, that give them physical and spiritual protection. It wasn't just physical protection, it was also spiritual, as to protect them from the elements of the desert, but the elements of Avodah Zarah, of idol worship that was all over the world, and from the influence of Mitzrayim, because when they left Mitzrayim, they always had that yearning to go back to Egypt. They needed to be protected and almost like have these clouds of glory act as a buffer between them and Egypt. Egypt representing small-mindedness, narrow, metzal, tzal, narrowness. Then, and another place that we hear about the clouds is on Mount Sinai. When we receive the Torah, it says, Vashem nira be'anan, God appeared in a cloud. The Shekhinah came through the cloud. So later on, how does this get imparted to us? It's in our homes now, is the beautiful marriage laws that in our Jewish family, the Kedusha, the holiness that we have in our homes, represents those clouds of glory that hovered over her tent. And later on, by the way, also the matriarchs and the patriarchs were blessed with, all the other matriarchs were blessed with that as well. She imparted this to them. And we know the story about Yitzhak. After his mom died, he was very heartbroken. Can you imagine losing a mom like Sarah, who wasn't just like the mom to Yitzhak, she was a mom to the whole nation. She is the matriarch, the first one. And when she died, all the miracles that appeared in her tent ceased to exist, like they didn't happen anymore. So there was no candle lit the whole week, and there was no bread that stayed fresh, and there was no cloud hovering over the tent. And when Rebecca came, suddenly, whoop, it was like a light went on and everything reconnected. And the candles were burning all week, and the bread was fresh, and the cloud of glory was again in the house, and there was this amazing serenity. And when Yitzhak saw that, he knew that Rivka was his soulmate, because everybody wants to marry someone like their mom, right? but it was more than that. He wanted someone who was going to carry the legacy of spirituality of his mom, because his parents were pioneers of the one God idea. He wanted to make sure that there was continuity for it to continue carrying the torch of the one God, of monotheism in the world. So when he saw that all those miracles reappeared, he was like, that's my girl. That's my girl. So we're seeing just like how beautiful this is, Sarah's qualities. And we're going to continue talking about a few more things. One of the things that Sarah in Hebrew means princess, nobility. And we're seeing just amazing nobility about Sarah, that even when she was in tight places, she never lost her royalty and her nobility. When she was kidnapped twice, right, into these very wicked people's, like Paro's, palace. Paro at the time was the leader of the superpower of the world. Like they were it, right? It's like America, it was it. He ruled over most of the world as we know it. And Paro promised her the moon and back, like you'll have everything, right? And she chooses Avraham and the one God, So you're seeing this amazing dignity and royalty and nobility. Another thing that's striking about Sarah that just stands out is we see in this week's Parsha, she doesn't like the fact, she knew that Yitzhak was going to be the one who's going to carry on the legacy of the one God. So it was important for her that he was not exposed to the elements, right? To like bad influences and bad impact. And Hagar, her son Ishmael, he was like a thief and he foul language, and she saw that it was very bad influence on Yitzhak. And as much as she was the most welcoming woman, remember that they're welcoming these Arabs, angels disguised as looking like Arabs, into their tent. They have 4 doors to their tent. They are very welcoming, and they're bringing people into the fold of Judaism. And yet her stepson, right? She was the one who told Avraham, take my, what was she called? The Meineket. It was really her maidservant, right? And you'll have children through her. And that was like, I would say, some commentators say that it was a mistake on her part, that she should have had a little bit more patience and not brought in Hagar and brought in Ishmael, because not everybody, we're suffering because of this conflict until today. The fact that Ishmael now is intertwined with us like this. And yet she stands up her ground and she says, no, I'm sorry. Ishmael has got to go, even though it was not easy for her to do that. So she stands up for her principle. She's very, very strong. And Hashem says to Abraham, listen to the woman. Listen to her, right? Tishma bekola. She has this assertiveness in her, right? These are the qualities of Sarah. I'm kind of like relishing today a little bit about Sarah, because I feel like what I want to do in Bereshit and this Chumash is really delve into the quality of the matriarchs, because if there are mothers, we have their DNA, we've got these qualities as well. And we just have to develop them if we don't, because we have it. It's not that it's in your DNA. Interesting, I was listening to a class and it said that 60% of our behavior and our responses and habits and our capabilities are DNA, our genetics, and 40 is free will and working on ourselves, and learning new habits and this and that. Interesting, because like they've had interviewed and researched people who were like adopted by another family. And then when they unite them with their biological family, it's very interesting. Like my brother-in-law, he used to donate his sperm to a Jewish sperm bank. And some of these children now contacted my in-laws. They found them because my sister-in-law did a, what do you call it? Does DNA, the saliva test. like Ancestry or whatever, 23andMe. And there's all these like kids out there who are looking, they would like to find out, their biological family. So it's interesting that my brother-in-law was a musician, and a lot of these kids are musicians. It's very interesting, So there is something about DNA. Now, we're not all DNA, right? We're not defined by it. We have free will. We could always expand and learn. And so if someone says, oh, I came from like a really horrible family who are abusive, low IQ, I could never achieve anything in life, that's also not true. You could always evolve, right? But it is true to the fact that, on a positive note, that if Sarah was so great, right? She had emunah. She stretched the boundaries of physicality to the realm of the supernatural. Like she was beyond, like she was so connected to miracles, right? She totally made everything mundane ordained. Like she totally didn't see a difference between the holy and the mundane. Everything was holy for her. Everything had an opportunity to be elevated. She was noble. She was royal. She was assertive. She was strong. She was kind. She was loving. She was soft. All of this in one woman, one complex woman, right? Like amazing. The wholesomeness of Sarah, right? What I love to see also is the amazing teamwork of Sarah and Avraham. And as we said in the beginning of the class, Hasidic masters look at Sarah and Avraham as being, so to say, the parable, Avraham being soul, Sarah being body. And when they team together, when the body understands that we are here in this world in service of our soul and not vice versa, and I'm here to make sure that my soul can achieve its tikkun in the best way possible, to achieve potential, to elevate, to gather wealth. Wealth is as much mitzvot as possible. Then we will all live in great wealth. If we could internalize this message, we will be Avraham and Sarah. We will live in great wealth. We will actualize our potential, and we will make our way to Jerusalem, which we said represents actualized potential. Be'ezrat Hashem, for all of us, that we should be able to fulfill our ye'ud, our destiny, our mission, and we should be able to bring God's name into the world like Avraham and Sarah. Now I'm opening the mic for all of you just to share, because I feel like you could learn so much from one another. How do you, so to say, fall in love with God when you feel disconnected? What helps you to reconnect and to love God? Anyone want to share?
So for me, it's nature. Like if it's a hot
I
day
love that.
and the clouds appear, like you'll be walking, it's so hot, and I'll sometimes ask, Hashem for clouds of glory. The clouds appear, and I, thank Hashem. For me, it's very much like if I'm in a crummy mood, or I sit on my swing, I see the little butterflies and I see the flowers. I mean, there's, I was reading, it was in one of the little handouts that's available, at the shul on Shabbos, what have you, and it was I don't remember which rabbi who wrote the deal, but talking about the mirror, like sees a peach pit, maybe the Chofetz Chaim or somebody saw the peach pit. Some rabbi, they're quoting some rabbi who saw a peach pit laying on the ground and turns to the person next to them and says, "What a miracle!" And the other person, all they see is a discarded peach pit. But the rabbi went on to explain about the peach pit, that it's so hard, and it's the two halves are held together essentially by cement, like a cement. You cannot pull it apart with your hands. But if you put it in the ground, the bacteria in the ground dissolves the cement that separates the two halves of the peach pit, so that the little seed will then be able to grow.
Wow.
And so there's no question that there's something greater that can't all just be evolution, right? That created all of this. So nature. So
you're seeing
really
the godliness. You're seeing godliness through nature.
I always see godliness through nature. That's that for me. Even when bad things are happening, I'll recognize some positive. I'm very blessed that I can. Not everybody can. I'm blessed that I can. That I
Wow.
can.
Baruch Hashem.
That doesn't mean I, am always all in, but
Hey, listen, it's like a flame. It goes back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So like in a way to reconnect, nature helps you to reconnect.
absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Hey, real quick, but
Really,
nobody else said anything. You're talking. I'm hoping next week. I don't know where we'll be discussing, but I was thinking about Rebecca, and I didn't think about it till you said it today. Even though I know that the candles came back, that the cloud came back, that the challah situation came back to Sarah's tent when Yitzhak brought Rivka to Sarah's tent, that things came back since his mother had passed. So it's not that I heard it for the first time today, but it occurred to me today, we don't hear so much about Rivka other than her conniving in order to get Yitzhak the bracha. I mean Yaakov the bracha when she has the two babies, Yaakov and Esau, that she, what she plots in order to make sure that Yaakov gets the bracha. And I know there's a lot to that. I mean, I've read, lots of things about it, but Sarah, you hear about her converting people and doing all this Curated. We don't hear about Rivka or even the other matriarchs for that matter, what they do beyond their immediate family. And so hopefully next week we'll hear some things about.
Yeah, so I have a few great books. One of them is called this one. She does a lot of like collecting midrashim about the matriarchs. And there's another book that I love, love, love. It's this one. Can you see? The Sisterhood of the Copper Mirrors. Also a great book that collects a lot of midrashim about the matriarchs. Because you're right, we don't get that much information through, the Chumash, but there is a lot of wealth in these women. And what's also incredible is that they each kind of like came from a different angle and a different aspect. Like Sarah was more outwardly, that was her mission. Where Rivka, her mission is to raise those two boys, and it's a completely different mission. She is more inwardly, and there's room for everybody. That's also what it is. In the service of Hashem, we're not all going to be teachers, and some of us will be students, and some will be students and teachers, and some will be more quiet, and some will be more outgoing. And so it's part of this whole, the different rays of light that create this beautiful, so to say, picture, full picture. So Bezrat Hashem will delve into Rivka next week. And really just think about it. To summarize, is how can I give Hashem nachat? How can I give Hashem nachat the way our matriarchs and our patriarchs gave him nachat? If you think about it, you might operate differently when it comes to certain situations, because you think, is this going to give God joy? Would Avraham and Sarah react like this? Is this befitting me as the daughter of Avraham and Sarah and Rivka, Rachel? Probably not. So we might choose something differently, a different reaction, a different response. And then the idea is like, how can we form, because Avraham, we said the matriarchs and the patriarchs were all about their love for God and God's love for them. So how can we work on this relationship of ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, to love God? If anyone else wants to share, so what helps them?
Devorah, how I close to Hashem is learning Torah and davening and being kind to people and being a good role model, even if it's a guy or whatever, role model, how a Jew is supposed to behave. But for me, to Hashem, Hashem is with me every day, every second. So it's just, Torah brings me close to Hashem. When I'm learning Torah and when I'm davening, I'm speaking to Hashem. It's personal. So that's how I get close. When I went to the Grand Canyon, lived in California, you go to the Grand Canyon, you see Hashem in the Grand Canyon. You see like Annette said, nature, but
Amazing.
it's Hashem,
Amazing.
he created everything, and he creates everything every day, every second.
Right.
So, but again, I gave myself to Hashem, and he's in control of my life, and that's it.
Beautiful.
And I love Hashem because he protects me and he watches over me, and he does every second. And
exactly.
that's it.
I think if we start looking at all the blessings in our life, we will not be able to be disconnected, because we're going to realize how overwhelming the amount of blessings in our life. Of course, everybody's lacking something, but we are also surrounded by so much blessing. So if you're feeling disconnected, start counting your blessings, and you will feel beautiful,
our children,
beautiful.
Our health, friends, family,
community.
Yes.
100%. So wonderful to see all of you. B'ezrat Hashem, we should only hear good news from one another. I'll see you, God willing, next week, same time, same place. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Shavua Tov.
Bye. Shavua Tov.
Bye.